All right, we are reconvening the 2023 budget hearings that started on Monday, November 6, 2023. It is now Thursday, November 9th, 2023. It is 3:03, and we are, the only scheduled presentation we have this afternoon is from the Sheriff's Office. So I'll turn it over to you gentlemen, and you can introduce everybody who's with you, and because we're recording this.
All right, thank you.
And take it over.
Thank you. I'm Sheriff Jeff Balzer, and thank you for allowing us to present this afternoon. With me today is my team. I've got our Chief Business Officer, Dean Stelzer, Chief Deputies John Scott and Dave Wiseman, Community Relations Director Tracy Whited, and Fiscal Manager Mikkel Roy. They've all been very crucial to creating this, especially Chief Business Officer Stelzer. And I also want to take a moment to thank Justin Navi and Tracy Davies for all their help as we work through this process. So thank you. I don't know whether you can see this screen. There we go.
Okay.
All right. This isn't part of our request for 2024, but I just wanted to point it out and say thanks. We've got pictures on the screen of our new, soon-to-be open Delaware County Sheriff's Office, and I'm very excited about this. By having this new office, we're moving out of facilities that we've outgrown a long time ago. This will allow us to bring many of the functions and personnel of the Sheriff's Office together to increase efficiency and also allow for future growth up there. It's well overdue, and we're very excited. Latest update we've had is probably sometime after Thanksgiving, maybe the first week of December, we'll hopefully move in. So if you haven't had a tour recently, come on up as soon as we get open, I'll walk you all through. So thank you very much for that. Also on the bottom part of that is the Delaware County Sheriff's Office Public Safety Training Facility. And we're starting to hear the folks when they sign off now, they used to say the former Ventures Academy, and I've got them now where they're saying we'll be out at the training facility. Again, we're very excited about this. We appreciate the support from the commissioners. This is a great facility which is going to help us to accomplish some of our goals, which I'll talk about in a few moments. Our calls for service have not changed dramatically as far as the type of things we've encountered. Vehicle and retail thefts are still a major source of calls that we receive. Also, another area is mental health related calls. These include well-being checks, suicides and attempted suicide. And our deputies are being asked to do more and more in this area. Even in the past few days, we had another, what we believe, it's under investigation, but what we believe to be another suicide in the county. And it's tragic. It really is tragic. When I spoke to the Farm Bureau earlier this year, there's been some articles about some increase throughout the country in farmers and suicide rates too, and depression. So that's a real topic with them too. We sent our deputies through training specific put on by the Mental Health Board to help them deal with these folks and to help them and direct them to services. So that is a big area. And I apologize, I just want to go back. I know that you've received our 2024 budget request and annual work plan. And at the end, I'll ask you if any questions about that. Another area we continue to have growth on are calls for service related to our schools and students. We have added, thanks to the commissioners, thanks to the school districts, we've added school resource officers this year. We soon, I think within this month, will have 17 school resource officers, which I tell everyone is the most school resource officers of any Central Ohio law enforcement agency. And that's because we have the confidence of our community, of our partners, that we're doing a good job in this. When I talk about the increase in calls, I'm talking about not just things that happen at school, but things that happen away from school and affect the schools. When a call comes in, someone notices on social media, a student making maybe a desperate plea for help, maybe a student expressing rage or a possible intention to hurt somebody. Our school resource officers are still on the clock. They're the first ones we call because they help us connect with the school administrators and to track it down. If all goes well, we try to identify that student that night, meet with their parents, and set up meetings with the school administrators the next day to keep them safely out of school until it's addressed. So that's another area that keeps on increasing. Our jail population, we are an outlier. I think a lot of jails had a dip during COVID where their population went down. Ours, before COVID, we were around 200 inmates we were holding a day. Our jail population we can hold, if the right mix comes up, is 286 inmates. Our average daily population at this point is between 130 and 140. I credit that to programs, a number of things, the demographics in Delaware County, but also to the Stepping Up Initiative and the LINK program, which seek to keep people with mental illness out of jail and also connects them to resources when they leave. As I know you've been updated before, the LINK program is pretty amazing. The recidivism for general population to go back to jail is over 50% within a year. The LINK program is less than 25%, and recently I saw that it's even down lower than that. So it really is helping. As part of that, we have the MAT, Medicated Assisted Treatment, which basically gets people started on a drug to keep them from hopefully craving alcohol or drugs. And we start that when they're in jail prior to being released. And then we connect them with community resources, again with the goal to reduce recidivism. The jail's not without challenges though. We've got great people that work in the jail. I'd just like to have more. We consistently struggle, along with all the other correctional facilities in Ohio, of recruiting and retaining corrections officers. This is something I've discussed with my fellow sheriffs across the state. We've also had discussions with the union. Last year we tried to address a few things in the contract as far as retention bonuses and some bonuses for overtime. But that is still one of the things I want to focus on as we move forward. Although our population of inmates is down, we still require a certain level of staffing because we have populations that need to be kept separate from each other. So there's a set number of staffing posts we still have to have. Also, we've noticed a trend that even though we have fewer inmates, those inmates that are held in jail tend to have more medical needs. So before, where we would maybe hold a lot more people for minor offenses in jail, maybe serve a weekend for something, we're not having those people now, but the people that do come into our custody seem to have a lot more medical needs, and so we're providing a lot more medical services at the jail and also away from the jail at the hospital too. Technology. In the past, we've sought and received funding to start a drone team. It's amazing how much we've made use of that team. We call them out for numerous situations. Anytime our tactical team is called out, anytime we have missing persons, whether it's a child, whether it's an elderly person, we call it the drone team. We had them out on this one recently, a couple of days ago. They have been crucial, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, for these type of events. We've even used them for oversight for some community events. If there's going to be a large gathering somewhere, we can put the drone up top to help us keep a view in case there are any disturbances or anything happening during the event. And we're seeking to purchase, I think, another one or two this year as well. Our goal is to have enough that we can keep one up in the air constantly when we're up there, so there's battery swaps, things like this. But it's also we partner with other agencies to do this initiative. Flock cameras. Flock cameras are something we're seeking to add to our list of technology. The flock cameras are something that have been deployed throughout Central Ohio and throughout the country. Basically, they're cameras like license plate reading type of cameras. They instantly can access criminal databases, relay that information to law enforcement. An example recently happened over in Marysville. If you read the paper about someone that's wanted for, I think, a homicide out of another state, Marysville police were notified that this person was in their jurisdiction because their license plate came up. It was entered as a wanted person, and they were notified. They were able to track this person down, this wanted subject. We have actually had the use of some of these cameras because a lot of other communities in Central Ohio have these cameras. We have used them to solve several of our cases. We have some information on a suspect, and we put the information in the database, and it'll tell us where they've been recently. It's very critical to helping us solve crimes. Our training, we earlier showed a photo of our public safety training facility, and I'm very excited about that. In February, we're going to have our first basic peace officer training academy class. And Chief Wiseman has done a great job, and Chief Business Officer Stelzer too, helping us with all this. We are lining up the folks from the Delaware County Sheriff's Office. We've also had a couple other agencies that have indicated they want to send people to us as well. The reason we wanted to do this is we've had some difficulties in the past. We've had difficulties with finding space for our people at other academies. And going forward, this will help us to put our folks in our academy. The other part of it is we've got a set of values. We hold ourselves up to pretty high standards. Not that our partner agencies don't, but if we can start from the very beginning of the law enforcement career to instill our standards, I think it's going to help us down the road as far as retention and recruitment too. When we can take people and show them our facilities, I think it's going to make them want to stay at our place. The building, the new training facility, will also be used for law enforcement and corrections in service, and also for our EMS partners. This goes on throughout the year. The location is kind of ideal, and unfortunately active shooter scenarios can happen anywhere, but many times it's kind of highlighted that they happen in school facilities. This is a former school. We trained up there this year. We will continue to train up there. Another type of training we're going to have for the future is joint training with our fire and EMS partners. During an active shooter scenario, what we want to establish are rescue task forces. These are a group that will go into a scene while it's still warm. We say that our law enforcement officers or deputies will respond immediately and go to the threat. We want to get people in there as soon as possible to treat any wounded folks. In the past, the emergency medical wouldn't go in until the scene was safe. And unfortunately, a lot of people succumbed to their injuries during that time. So we've got it worked out now. We're going to do training. So our partners with the emergency medical service and fire personnel, they'll go in with us. We'll send deputy sheriffs or police officers with them to guard them while they provide that life-saving care. Again, that's a program we're going to be implementing this coming year. Our community expectations. I tell people that we don't live on an island and that we're not going to build a southern wall along our border. What I mean by that is that what happens in other areas affects us, whether it's down at the southern border, when drugs come across and they end up in Delaware County, they really do, or whether it's the folks down in Columbus, the crime spills over from there. And we've seen it. We've seen the robberies, we've seen car thefts from juveniles, carjackings. Unfortunately, this comes up into our community too. I've mentioned that to our folks that, you know, the sheriff's office is not just for the unincorporated parts of Delaware County. I'm the sheriff for all of Delaware County, just like you're the county commissioners for the entire county. What's important is that we have those relationships, though, with our other law enforcement partners, whether it's the Delaware Police Department, Westerville, Dublin, Genoa, Sunbury, Highway Patrol. We've got great partnerships, and I think our community counts on that. Through organizations such as our Delaware County Law Enforcement Executives, DCLE, we have joint initiatives that we all participate in. Our Delaware Tactical Unit, which is like a SWAT team, our Drug Task Force, our drone team. We're going to establish a mobile field force, so if there is a specific incident happening in one community, we can dispatch officers who are well-trained to go to that community to help out. Almost every aspect of our quality of life depends on a well-trained, dedicated, and professional law enforcement team, which we're very fortunate to have supported in our community. I and we are committed to keeping Delaware County a safe place to live, work, and raise our families. I'd like to characterize our staffing, our request, or what we plan to do in the coming year as modest. We're looking at hopefully 3 additional patrol deputies, 1 additional deputy to help out with training, and 1 additional IT professional, which IT, as you well know, every aspect that we do nowadays, IT has a hand in. This is in addition to our existing vacancies. And that was noted in our, one of our work plans I sent up too. I want to talk about this for a moment of why it's important. There's a couple different photos on there from recent events we've had. Every year, we request funding for personnel, projects, and equipment. The photos on the screen depict two relatively recent events which dramatically show why financial support to the Sheriff's Office is critical to the safety of our community. In August of 2022, an incident occurred in Knox County. A person there had outstanding warrants. The Sheriff's Office up there had tried to arrest him. The person had resisted. He basically had a compound out his estate in the county. After an incident where he and his brother shot at a bail bondsman who was trying to take him into custody, Knox County called for assistance. Several tactical teams responded that evening, including the Delaware Tactical Unit. At the end of this incident, recovered from the scene from that area were over 1,000 firearms and over 140,000 rounds of ammunition. These two brothers who swore they weren't going to be taken in for this had a propane business. They parked propane trucks at strategic locations to either block access or we suspect that it may be to ignite at some point or explode. Our team, the folks that responded, were Delaware Tactical Unit, our negotiators, our mobile command vehicle, our command personnel, our drone team. As part of the equipment for our tactical team, we had a Bearcat. A Bearcat is an armored vehicle. At one point during this encounter, the suspects shot at law enforcement officers. We are so very fortunate that the officers, and it was actually from Marysville, but we had people, I believe, in that team, we had people in that vehicle as well, in that Bearcat. They took multiple rounds from a high-powered rifle to this vehicle. If it weren't for that equipment, we would have had injured or dead law enforcement officers that day. The drones. The drones played such an important role that day. One of the photos shows the house where they were at. At some point, they came out the back, got in a side-by-side, all-terrain vehicle or UTV, and took off at a high rate of speed. They knew the area. They were zipping through the woods. Our drones were up. They immediately notified our personnel and all personnel that they're on the move and they're coming your way. They came through the woods. They had their rifles out. Our folks engaged them, and we stopped the threat right then. Without having that team up there, the drones, again, that could have been a tragedy. Luckily, the other incident wasn't as tragic, but it was more recent. In September at the Tanger Outlet Malls, there was a domestic violence incident. As part of that incident, the one subject had a gun. When he was encountered, he went and barricaded himself in a restroom. Now we've got a barricaded armed subject in a very populated area. Immediately we put out the call. Our Delaware tactical team showed up, our negotiators, our patrol, our partner agencies, again, our mobile command responded, our detectives, our command team. We are so very fortunate that after a short time, our negotiators were able to get him to surrender peacefully. But the reason I bring this up again, our drone team again played a vital role, and our canines were also out there too. We were concerned that this subject in the bathroom was going to try to get to the ceiling and get to somewhere else, crawl into another space, get somewhere else, get up on the roof, get away. Could we have put someone up on that roof? We could have. Would it have been dangerous having an armed individual popping out on the roof? It certainly would have been. The drone was an important part of our unit that day. The personnel, equipment, and training necessary to successfully respond to these and manage these types of large incidents all require substantial funding from this board, and we appreciate it. So I just want to kind of bring it home. Sometimes we make these requests, but here's one of the reasons why we make these requests. This board of commissioners and county administrator have always been very supportive of the Delaware County Sheriff's Office. I appreciate and embrace the need to be fiscally responsible to our taxpayers while still providing the best possible service to our community. I thank you for your consideration and support, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Very good. Thank you, Sheriff. Really goes without saying, at least for me, that we can't, thank you enough for what you all do. We live in a great county, and it's a safe county, and it's because of what you do, the other law enforcement groups in our county, and so we really thank you all for doing that. I'll open up for questions. Commissioner Merrill, Tracy, Dawn.
I guess I'll go first.
Okay.
Obviously, being fiscally conservative is important. The dollars we're spending in this area is substantial. So, and I just want to make that statement for the record and for the benefit of our taxpayers, that we all take this very seriously, including Sheriff's Department. One area that I have brought up in the past, and it continues to bother me, is the federal prisoners. I looked at your math here. It severely understates the daily cost because you don't have 280 for whatever the beds are per day. You have about 130. So that means this cost is about twice per prisoner than what is reflected here. Does that make sense? 280 versus, you said about 130, 140.
Right now, that's how many inmates we have. And just to follow up on that a little bit, the price we currently charge for federal, actually any non-Delaware County prison. So if we hold it for Licking County or anyone else, it's $83 per day. We came up with that amount through negotiations with the U.S. Marshals in 2020. And they took a lot of different factors into that account. We had supplied them with a lot of information. Right now, we're averaging probably around 10 federal inmates a day. That comes out to a little over $900 a day at $83 per inmate, and a little bit over $300,000 per year is what we're receiving for those inmates. That's just information.
From the sheriff I'm sitting in, we're subsidizing the federal government on the prisoners. If these operation costs are accurate, and I realize you have to make some assumptions. So, but the cost per inmate, if you used 130 or 140 we have, has got to be 130, $140 per inmate, at least. And the federal government needs to pay their fair share, or we ought to get rid of it. We ought to quit doing it. You may be able to give me reasons why we continue to subsidize it, but we're subsidizing by a big margin, and I guess we have a contract of 2025. When we renegotiate, we need to take into consideration inflation factors that this current government has put in place, and if we can't recover our cost, then I'm not sure why we're doing it. And that's just a statement. You're going to try to convince me why I'm wrong.
No, I'm not going to try to convince you, but I guess when I talk about partnerships, it extends to our federal partners too. We do have an opportunity in 2025 to revisit that, and I intend to do that. The negotiations, last time we contracted with a company who are, it's amazing. There's a company that does everything, and there's a specific company that negotiates these contracts. They're former federal contractors with the federal government. They took into account at the time, we had to provide them so much information, not just from the sheriff's office, but also for our maintenance staff, for the payroll staff, from the auditor's office, to include all this information, come up with that $83. I think at the time that was a pretty good figure. We went from $65 that we'd had for, good golly, 10 or more years to up to $83. Do I think that probably the value of those beds has gone up? I do, and I think it'll be reflected on that. That's a discussion moving forward. We've greatly reduced the number of inmates. Gosh, before I came to the sheriff's office, at one point the Delaware County Jail was holding up to 70 federal inmates. That was too many. For a number of reasons. One of them was just safety issues. We started doing classification, and now we hold about 10. Some of that works out for us too. We are partners on some federal task forces, our drug task forces. It allows us to hold some of those people we arrest on federal charges in our facility. But that's something we'll review as we come to that time. And certainly, I'm always looking to make sure that we're getting paid our fair share.
Well, all I'm saying, based on the number of people that we're housing currently, this is probably 50% of the real cost. If I take these are operational costs, they're not overhead costs. So that's not even factored into the equation. And I'm not suggesting it should be, but we should be getting back the operational cost. And using your math, not mine, it'd be about twice this number.
That's something we're going to address when we have that. We just have to, the MOU or the agreement we signed with the federal government says we have to stick with that price for 5 years. But my intention is, as we get close to the end of this year, because I think it's May of 25 when that'll come up, I'd like to start several months early to get in those negotiations so that way we can have a good idea. I've seen some other county jails that have done it recently, which are significantly higher than our rate. So that's something we'll look at then.
Sheriff, if I could just ask you a question kind of related to that.
Yes.
Are there incremental costs associated with having another federal prisoner?
That was one of the things I was going to somewhat address. I think we need to negotiate, try to get as high as price as we can. The actual analysis that should be done, the CPA in me steps back and says we need to look at incremental cost, because arguably if we got rid of the federal prisoners, if our costs don't go down, we just lost out on that revenue source. I think a lot of jails entered into agreements with the federal government because they looked at it and they said they got a certain amount of fixed costs, and if they add, who knows, 70 additional federal prisoners a month, their costs will go up a little bit. Obviously, got food, medical, and all that sort of stuff, but their costs are going to go up here, but this revenue is going to be way more than that to offset it. From a business perspective, it probably makes sense. But again, that's the analysis we need to do. Haven't done it. As we get, if we get to that point, it's probably what we should do before we just say, let's not take any federal prisoners.
And I'm not saying that, but
I
on
think
the
we
other
should,
side,
yeah.
what's going to be said is
Right.
we can go up 5%, 6% or whatever, but I don't believe that. And I realize there's some cost accounting, some
Right.
assumptions have to be made. I understand all that.
Sure.
And I did exaggerate to make my point, but based on these numbers, it would be roughly double.
Right, and the other thing is that, you gotta look at it from their perspective and say, what options do they have? And if their cost to house them somewhere in a federal facility is $200 a night, they're still getting a heck of a deal, and somehow we need to
They're
capture
getting
a bit
if it's
more of that.
$200 a night, they're getting a heck of a deal.
Right, so we still need to capture some of that.
So we've got to be willing to, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but we've got to be willing to stand our ground and say, we need to be at this number, and I don't know what that number is. I know it's not double, but we need to be willing to walk away if they're not good partners. And you use the word partners, I'll use that word. And I'm not sure they're being good partners right now, from the chair I'm sitting in. So that's my only point.
I appreciate your concerns, I really do. And that's something that when we get closer, I'm going to review it and make sure that it looks cost effective for us to continue the partnership.
Yeah, this is a very common situation that we ran into in the private sector. When you add a program or add whatever, and you get just your costs go up incrementally, but your revenue goes up a lot. Are you better off? And it's an interesting debate, and I know Dean knows the numbers very well. But again, if there really aren't very many incremental costs, then the $300,000 we're getting from federal revenues really help offset. Now, again, I'm not suggesting that that's high, because it isn't. It's low, and it needs to be renegotiated, sure. And I'm sure you will. But again, a jail is a largely fixed cost operation, and whether you have 130 prisoners or 140, the costs aren't going to change much. But if you can get $300,000 in revenue, how many or out of Delaware County?
Very few.
Inmates?
Very few. I think right now we probably have one.
Okay.
That we've held long-term for Pike County. Occasionally, we'll have one from Knox or Union or Licking, but it's usually short-term. So the majority of our county are the U.S. Marshals. And you're right, we're trying to defray some of the standard operating costs. And I probably didn't make the point well enough. When I was talking about whether we have 280 inmates or whether we have 130, we still have certain requirements we have to meet. Sure. As far as staffing and different things. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, I understand everything that's been said, and I don't disagree with anything that's been said. But I think there is a general feeling that we are not where we need to be. And I would question having these 5-year contracts. We should be able to raise the rates, adjust them annually. And if they say no, then we have to be willing to walk away, because in that 5th year, based on what's happened the last 5 years, it's a lot. The cost, the money we're getting, inflation adjusted, is substantially less. If you 6-7% inflation times 30%. So these rates would be under by 30% over what they were 4 years ago. And I'm doing some rounding in my head, but
Sure.
the point's clear. We shouldn't have to wait 5 years to adjust the rates. Or the rates got to be adjusted higher to offset the anticipation of inflation somewhere in the middle of that. Right now, I think we get played a little. If I'm sitting in the federal chair, I'd be saying it differently, okay? But I'm representing the taxpayers in Delaware County. And that's all I'm asking, is that we represent them and sure we take care of them. So that's all I'll say.
Thank you.
That it? Okay.
Yes, just questions about the different types of inmates that you have now, and
Yes.
then how has that changed?
It has changed. The pandemic kind of started us down that path, and also, like I said, stepping up especially. Those held in jail are there for usually serious crimes, or people who have repeatedly failed on probation, things like this. Gone are the days where you'll have someone in jail for shoplifting. We have very few that are in for misdemeanors, nonviolent offenses. And when I tell this to the community, and I go out and tell them how dramatically our jail population has dropped and compared to other communities, I get a look sometimes like, oh my goodness. And I said, do you feel safe? Do you feel safe in your community? I do. And I said, I guess what we're doing is working. The message, and it's a partnership with the courts, with the prosecutors, with the other law enforcement agencies, our social services network. If someone needs to go to the jail and they've hurt somebody or it's a serious crime, they're going to jail. Our judges make sure they stay in there. It's just we don't have the folks, as many nonviolent offenders as we used to. Right now, we've got several people in our jail for homicide, which is kind of unusual, but it's just because of some events that have happened. So those that come in, the other inmates, I've had this comment to me from the jail director, that the other people that we used to house, they didn't really require a ton of effort from us. You know, they come in, they'd do their 10 days, they'd do their 20 days, and they'd be gone. You wouldn't hear anything from them. They just did their time and got out. Those folks don't come to jail very often anymore. Now the folks that are in there require more attention from us, whether it's medical, psychological services, or just other responses.
That's what I wondered, yeah, very. And then you mentioned 2 types of crime, bleeding over from, say, Franklin County?
Yes.
And some other counties too?
Oh, it
What's
happens.
Franklin?
Even within the past few days, we had a group, we believe they were juveniles. They had stolen a car. This kind of gets to be a standard story. Stolen a car down in Columbus, came up to Delaware County as part of their tour. Tried to steal some vehicles up here, stole some things out of vehicles. As we're responding, trying to go to find out where they are, trying to track them, they headed back down to Franklin County. We recovered a vehicle and trying to link them up. Our detectives work so closely, and our analysts too, work so closely with Columbus Police and all the other locations to get descriptions of the people. And I've said it before, just because we don't initially catch them doesn't mean they don't get caught. We've got really great detectives. We've got really great analysts. So we can identify them. If we can't get them at the time, if we can identify them later on, then maybe we're going to do it when we're ready. We'll do it safely when we can catch them somewhere they're not ready for it, instead of possibly getting into some high-speed pursuit, which endangers everyone. But yes, that does affect us.
Is it mostly petty theft, cars being stolen too, you mentioned before.
We've had that, and then even in the Polaris area, there's been other crimes. We had, not too long ago, it was in the city of Columbus, yet they still get prosecuted in Delaware County. They come to Delaware County Jail, a homicide down in the Polaris area. And that's always a concern too. Again, the city of Columbus handles that. However, we're their partners. We respond to back them up, and we've seen some increase in that as well.
So then, are they tried here?
Yes.
Even though they're,
Yes.
okay,
Oh,
that's what
yes.
I thought.
Yeah,
Okay.
for felony cases, they come up
Okay.
here. And I'll put a little shout out to our prosecutor out there. The law enforcement agencies of Central Ohio, if their jurisdiction happens to come in Delaware County and someone commits a crime, they're very happy to have Melissa Sheffel and her team being their prosecutors.
Very true.
I'm not disparaging anyone else. I'm just saying that they're very happy to have Prosecutor Sheffel and her team being the prosecutors.
Boy, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sheriff.
I do
Thanks.
have one other comment.
Thanks for the job.
You know, we had issues in Polaris 3 or 4 years ago. And Polaris is very important to this county for
Yes.
sales tax revenue. And you've spoken more generally, but is our relationship improved or over what it may have been 3 or 4 years ago in the area? Or you think it's, how would you describe a relationship right now in that Polaris area?
Business community, citizens, or law enforcement?
Columbus Police Department, et cetera.
We're good.
Okay.
We're pretty darn good. My two chief deputies and I went down, I may have mentioned this, probably a month or two ago, and met with Chief Bryant and her assistant chiefs. I wanted to do that specifically. I'd kind of seen them all in passing, said hi, one of them I knew better than the others, but I wanted to make that connection. So now I've got Chief Bryant's cell phone, she's got mine, same with, we all exchange contact information. We've got a really good relationship with Columbus Police. They are a big city. They deal with so many things down there. We're very fortunate that we're in Delaware County. We don't have the volume of the calls that they have. They work hard. They're a very good law enforcement agency, and our partnership is strong with the Columbus Division of Police. If they need help, they're going to call us, and we do. We respond, because sometimes if there's an incident in Polaris, we're going to have deputies there more quickly than they'll have additional CPD units, and we'll work together.
Because the point of all this, and I think we all agree, the reputation of Polaris being a safe place to shop is important to all of us. And if we lose that perception or that belief, then it could have a negative impact long term.
Commissioner Merrill, I'll also add that the sheriff and his team have been very proactive in meeting with the business leaders in the Polaris area. I've had the opportunity to sit in at least one of those meetings, and I know that the business leaders, large landowners down there are very thankful for that. And I think the sheriff and his team were able to reassure them of things that they are doing behind the scenes that not everybody knows about, that, as the sheriff says, we might not catch them at the time, but we are catching them later. And I think that that was a great comfort to those business leaders.
And I applaud those efforts.
Thank you, and I appreciate Administrator Davies helping to facilitate those meetings too. We've actually got another one today, just got set up for a general manager of the Polaris Mall is coming up here in a couple of weeks. We also, as part of that, indirectly, but it certainly counts, they've reached out to us to have our deputies work special duty down there. Part of it is there's not enough law enforcement officers to fill the special duty request, but we've got people working down there in the mall, and they have responded and been instrumental in stopping crimes down there too.
Good.
Yeah. A couple other things. First of all, I want to acknowledge the very, very good levels of patience you and your predecessor, Sheriff Martin, exhibited in surviving the building that you were shoehorned in until next month. You know, we've known for a long time that was not a good fit. And, you know, again, Sheriff Martin and yourself were very patient working with us, understanding that this new facility would take a long time, and it did, but it's like you said, it's overdue. We acknowledge that, and it'll last for decades now, and it'll be an appropriate facility. So I just want to, again, publicly acknowledge that you put up with tight situation there for a long time. We really do appreciate that. And I'm really looking forward to the ribbon cutting whenever that officially is. I know it'll be a few weeks yet, but that'll be a lot of fun.
I hearken back to something that my mom still tells me, something she ingrained in me when I was younger. The saying was, patience is a virtue. And she said it to me many times. Former Sheriff Martin did an outstanding job overall. And one specific area is him pushing for this and working with the Board of Commissioners to get this in place. And I'm very excited, and he's certainly going to be on the guest list to be out there when we open it up.
Yeah.
And we had to get the courthouse, it was priority number one because of judges, and then,
Sure.
of course, you had to remodel this building, couldn't let it sit idle. So, and I appreciate the patience. Sheriff Martin and I had, with all of us, had a number of conversations.
Right.
And, but I think we got a good result.
I think so too.
Yep. One other question, I know we've talked in the past, and that is, and I know you've talked to other townships, about expanding the policing that is done there to a neighborhood level or something beyond what we do today. Have those discussions gone anywhere at this point? Are you still?
They haven't progressed beyond that. We've met with several townships or villages, providing them information on the cost, the actual full cost for a deputy, for cruisers, things like this, which is still a substantial savings to them creating their own police agency. We're going to continue. I'm going to continue those conversations, specifically some trustees who have been elected, re-elected recently have indicated their interest in continuing those conversations, and I'm open to that.
Okay.
I think the Delaware County Sheriff's Office does a really good job of protecting the people of Delaware County. I think the Delaware County Commissioners provide appropriate funding for the Delaware County Sheriff's Office. But a lot of our residents want that extra level of law enforcement. That's what I'm trying to communicate to them, that it is important. If it's important to you, then we can partner together, come up with a plan, and supplement, have additional deputies for their specific area. So I'm going to continue those discussions.
Okay. Again, big picture, strategically, I think it makes a lot of sense.
I do too.
Rather than setting up a full law enforcement agency within some other townships. So,
I agree.
good to hear.
They understand they'd be paying for it.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
have. I've been very upfront with them on that.
Yeah,
That
that's great.
even paying for 100% of this cost, it's still going to be cheaper
It's-
because, I'll just give a real quick example. Let's say a township wants to have 24-hour coverage. They want to have a couple of deputies on at all times. So Chief Scallon's kind of my expert in this. He's the one who usually gives me the formulas. But I'm going to say maybe that takes, for 3 shifts, maybe that takes 8 deputies. 9, thank you. See, he's an expert. But what they get for that is more than just 9 deputies. They also get the supervision level that we're going to provide. We've already got supervision in place. They're also going to get the detectives and all the support and things that we already have in place for the rest of the county. If they didn't have that, they'd have to have administration, everything else to go with it. Plus, we've got a pretty darn good reputation. I think they'd be getting the best sheriff's office around, too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, interesting idea to continue to, possibly move forward. I know we've talked about it with various townships over the years, and it's good to see that those discussions are continuing. I didn't have anything else. No other questions. Again, I want to thank Tracy or Dawn. Any questions, comments? I want to thank you for all you do. Thank you for the presentation. And I think, I know one other thing I want to mention. I'm really encouraged to see the school resource officers being expanded. I think that just makes a lot of sense, because continuously what we hear is the parents of school kids, their biggest concern is safety, honestly. We hear that routinely. And so the school resource officers and the partnership there goes a long ways. I think the schools recognize it, we recognize it, your team certainly does, so it's good to see that program expanded. Dean, you had a comment?
Just related to that, we have reached out to the schools several months ago and talked about the fact that you know, that operation's growing, and now we've added some support staff and a second sergeant and whatnot. And we were able to, they tentatively agreed to changing our formula and including our administrative staff in the calculation. Otherwise, they're just paying 50% of the or payroll costs of the actual assigned SROs. We're going to have to amend our agreement, and more than likely, I'll reach out to schools first to make sure they are ready to sign, and then I'll bring that back to the commissioners, and we'll change that formula.
Just
We had good support from the district superintendents. Chief Wiseman and I met with some of them. He oversees the school resource officers. They were, frankly, they were happy to do it because they saw the value in having the additional supervision.
I just wondered how that worked. If a school, does a school come to you, or do you just evaluate? I mean, there are a lot of school buildings here. Do you just evaluate where the resource policeman is needed?
Both. They come to us, and then we evaluate it. So, in other words, you know, if a school district came to us and said, we need to have 10 next year, well, that's going to be awful
Yeah.
difficult to ramp up
Yeah.
10. So we work with them, where's the highest need, where's the most critical need? But they propose it, we review it, Chief Wiseman makes a recommendation, Chief
Okay.
Scouten has to say, can we support it through our deputies, because we don't give them brand-new deputies, we give them veterans. But it's a partnership on that.
Okay.
So depending on the district, Buckeye Valley right now has one school resource officer in each of their schools. They can do that.
Oh, okay.
Big Walnut has 2 deputies and 1 Sunbury police officer in their schools. Olentangy has 10, and then the Career Center has 1. I think we're pretty well represented. The Olentangy, we've talked about future plans, what they may do, because we can't cover 31 schools or how many schools
Right,
they have.
right.
But there's other options they're talking about, and
Uh-huh.
it's going to be a partnership as we
Yeah.
move forward.
Another topic we've discussed and toured was the gun range. I know we're looking at moving that. Obviously, with the expanded transfer station, that makes it much more difficult and to continue where it is. And I know we're looking at alternatives. How's that coming along?
We, if it hasn't been presented yet, just for the funding for that study, it will be soon. I know Dean was working to have that on the docket for you soon.
Okay.
Yes, that needs to happen. I didn't specifically mention this because it's not a budget request at this point because we don't have the estimate on it. But you're right. Just the other day, we got a traffic complaint again up on 42 because there's all these trucks out there blocking the roadway. We sent a drone up because we wanted to capture to see what was going on. Chief Wiseman worked with the folks from Regional Sewer with Eric McPeak. There's some things they're going to try to change the operation a little bit to hopefully help a little bit on that. But it just really is, it's high usage, and our deputies have a difficulty time getting back to the range now. We have to swing around all the trucks, try to weave through the trucks in that area to get back to the access point where we can go through there. It's difficult. We'll make it through for now. We're gonna make it work because we've got to have a range. But longer term, I'm very interested to see what that estimate comes back on, and then to present it to the board as a future funding request.
Good. I know, clearly, when we toured it, it made sense. You know,
Yes.
this is not the right spot for the gun range anymore.
That's right.
Well, I just want to thank you so much and all the deputies, and I want to
Yeah.
thank Tracy too. She has been a valuable part of when, if Jane was out of town or needed a little help, and, but thank you. We know you're always there for us.
Tracy's a pro.
Yes.
Does a good job.
She got my photos Sunday at the parade.
Yeah,
She sent
I
that
got
to me
those.
for it. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thank you again, Sheriff and the whole team. You guys do great work, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, Jennifer, I think we're done with the hearings then, so we
Okay.
can